If you read the untold story of Mao, you realize that sleepers can exist for 50 years, be completely normal in your society. No one would ever even know it. CIA operatives say you can't tell when someone's lying. So yeah, of course there are. Probably 100,000. At least 100,000 implants that are in every single level of society, propagandizing the dissolution, the dissolution of the family unit, the same thing they did in China, right? And the promotion of this equality that isn't really equality, but a redistribution system to the top, 1%.
So yesterday we met someone who just asked me questions. I think her son got an offer from the university in China.
Oh.
She said it's like an MIT, US MIT.
Yeah.
And she's wondering if her son should go for it. What's your suggestion on that?
There's very few scientists and or engineers that don't get utilized as ditch diggers by the higher up. So let me explain. I grew up in Los Alamos. My father was a nuclear engineer. He worked on the Manhattan Project. So I have a pretty good provenance and understanding of the relationship between technical people and bureaucrats, right? So the technical people, just like everybody else, are sold the dream. The domino theory or the expansionist theory, where they are engineering in order to secure the safety for their future children. But a lot of times it's just a lie. I'm sure the Chinese feel the same way. I'm sure the technologists in China are fighting for the future of their children because they've been told by, the elites that that's what's going on, right? But in fact, it's not what's going on. Taking 20% of your economy and dumping it into a military-industrial complex is just churn. It's not promoting anything in the world except for military dominance, and countries come and go.
Yeah, and also CCP has the 1,000 Talents program. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, they send those implants to America and then they learn their technology and then bring back to China.
Yes, of course they do.
So right now they're recruiting students from the United States to the communist China. That's another strategy to harm the American citizens.
First of all, I think things have been corrupt forever. There's never been a non-corrupt system. I think what we see now is that the oligarchs across the world, this isn't about China, it's not about the United States, and it's not about Europe or England. It's not about that. It's about the ultra powerful having become aligned and understanding that in order to gain control of the world, that they have to have some kind of synergy between themselves. And these guys, they have like $500 trillion. They're massive, right? It's a huge thing. And so what they do is they invest in the best and brightest, and they sell them the dream. And then the best and brightest devise the future for how they can succeed. And not just one, which is why I'm like, the narrative here for this Trump thing, I like Trump a lot. The narrative here is that the victory is at hand, that as long as we stay diligent. But there are systemic things, at the base of the world is money, finance. It runs the world. So these oligarchs align on these multiple levels of strategies, to take over our world, right? To enslave us, basically, just like any time in history. And at the bottom of that is the thing that no one talks about, which is the banking system. The banking system is aligned with China and Russia, the United States. They're all using this similar banking system, right? And the banks create contracts that enslave people. That fractional lending, it means that someone gives me money, the Federal Reserve, I keep less than 10% of it. And then I give away, I loan out, the other 90, 100% to other banks or other institutions. And those people do the same thing. Every time that happens, it devalues the labor of everybody in the world. Not just one person, everybody. Because the US currency is the dominant currency, so other countries' currencies are hooked to it. When you inflate that currency through the devaluation of labor, you devalue labor worldwide. So that goes on everywhere all the time.
Then
so
what should we do?
Yeah.
What should we do for this
Yeah,
situation?
The ordinary people is a very hard thing to fight, right? Because you're doing these transactions. One thing you have to recognize that's going on, right? And then the second thing you have to do is try and transact with other people in like kind and or gold standards that are outside of the system of taxation and banking. The only way we break their use of our time which is what they do, right? They're just stealing humans' time, making them into like farm animals, right? And then using that to self-aggrandize. So the only way you break that is if people decide to have transactions amongst themselves that is independent of national currency.
Do you think cryptocurrencies can do that?
Probably not.
Why?
Because it's only got a $2 trillion valuation. You know, BlackRock just underwrote Bitcoin. Have you seen that lately?
Yeah.
Well, you know, BlackRock's got $2 trillion. They could buy out the whole crypto market. Once you can buy the majority of a market, you pretty much control price. It doesn't matter whether it's Bitcoin or any other thing. So that's the point of this, is that when you transact something, if someone else has the majority of it, they can change the valuation, and they most certainly will. Which you see in the marketplace today. I don't know if you know that. You know, do you know what happens when the Federal Reserve supposedly prints money? Really, they increment a database value, you know? Do you know what happens to that money?
Devalue.
That money moves into the Fortune 500 with a multiplier. Do you understand that concept? In other words, the top companies in the world directly get that money within a year with the multiplier effect. We don't get the money. You know, none of us get the money. Our labor gets devalued, they get that money, and then they get to exercise that against us because they get first option to buy. So how does that help you in competition? You as an individual, how do you compete against a Fortune 500 company that just got, you know, $1 trillion or hundreds of billions? You can't.
So then the oligarchs will forever enslave us?
Of course. They've already forever enslaved us.
So we never have a chance to...
No, we do have a chance. Our chance is, and it's always the same, is that when you want power, you have to grab it at the leaf. You know, there's the tree, right, with all the branches. You have to grab power at the leaf. You know, we have power as communities. When you are a community that's organized together, then you can transact transactions with independently of all the other systems that are out there. As long as we buy into their system of finance, as long as we buy into their systems of government, we will always be slaves, no matter what anybody tells you. You know, because the value of our labor will continue to diminish. You know, the value of the labor in the United States is 3 cents on the dollar from 1912. In other words, when you put in an hour of labor in 1912 in the United States, you got a full dollar. Now when you put in that value of labor, you get 3 cents. That's a pretty big decrement, you know?
Actually, our system has the Himalaya coin and Himalaya dollar, so we support point-to-point transaction.
Which is really good. Yeah.
We get rid of the third party or the intermediaries. That's the goal that the institution is going forward with.
Yeah.
But right now, it's having a lot of resistance in the international law.
Yeah, they'll never accept it into that transactional system, right? Where you buy their currency with your currency, because once you can do that, then you break the system, right? And then as long as they have fractional lending where you can multiply your debt, that's horrible for people. You know, I mean, they always say, oh, it's what's made everything great. No, it's what's enslaved us.
So you think there has to be like some organization or an individual who's brave enough to break this?
They have to talk about it first. Do you hear anybody talking about it?
I don't know.
You know, like here,
Miles.
like in these conversations, this is a narrative about the sovereignty of the individual and their freedom. But where is the conversation about their enslavement to the U.S. dollar, which is completely fabricated and has no basis? You know, there's been suggestions that they'll tie it back to gold and stuff like that, which is great, by the way. But it's still like a very low undercurrent with no conversation, and yet it's the systemic failure in our system.
Did you get any chance to watch War Room?
Oh yeah, sure.
Like,
I think Bannon's incredibly intelligent and just a great guy. You know, he's fighting for people. Honestly, I don't watch anybody consistently. I like read a very wide breadth of stuff, you know, just so I can stay like, you know, in tune with stuff. Yeah.
Broad knowledge, broad information.
Yeah, because you can't, I don't trust anything. For the longest time, because I know about sleepers, you know, I questioned Trump, you know, because why did he accept a contract didn't blame someone for harm? You know, in terms of the vaccine. You know, the vaccine's completely bogus, right? I mean, this crazy thing that they invented that has all sorts of negative side effects, right? Why would you sign a contract that allows them to not have liability? And I know the reason. He wanted rapid deployment because he was told by scientists that this is something that will help us, you know? But, you know, maybe a little bit more data check would have been better, right? So that made me question him, and I was thinking, God, you know, how can I know, no matter what someone shows, how can I know that they're actually aligned with my principles? You must have this problem in China. How do you know when someone's actual? How do you know you don't have to fear them? You know?
Just follow, like, you
What?
have to dig all platforms to read the information
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
to analyze by yourself. Previously, you mentioned the vaccine, right?
Yeah.
Do you think, is there anything that the CCP is playing a role in the?
Well, they absolutely do. Oh, how do I know that?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was in digital healthcare. I owned a digital healthcare company, and we served seniors and elderly care, right, in nursing homes and assisted living communities. Well, they shut those all down. So the people on my board wanted to start selling PPE equipment, protective equipment. So I researched protective equipment. I thought, this stuff doesn't work. I'm not going to sell something that doesn't work to people, you know. So then I started researching COVID itself, and I read a scientist in September in China had written that COVID had escaped the lab. I thought, oh, that's interesting. And then 3 weeks later, he wrote an article about how it escaped Wuhan and was now in Europe. And those articles got wiped from the internet in October. So I read them, and then they were gone. I was like, that's weird, you know? And then I started reading about PPE equipment because these guys wanted to buy it. And when the COVID broke out in January, China had already, they had like millions, I mean hundreds of millions of masks and PCR 40 tests already warehoused, ready to go on the ships to come to America. So that means that they were prepared for it, right? It means that they had time to manufacture this stuff and warehouse it and put it ready to go on the ships. It means that they knew. So the scientists knew, they knew, they were funded by Fauci, so of course they were involved in it.
So like Fauci funded and cooperating with the Chinese.
Definitely
Communist
cooperating.
Party.
Definitely cooperating. The guys definitely should be in jail right now as a treason.
Which one would you think is worse, the vaccine itself or the virus?
Well, the virus is non-consequential. So all these COVID-like type viruses, you know, they're like the common cold. They have a very well-known life cycle, right? So every immunologist knows it. Every virologist knows it. You know, the life cycle of these type of diseases is that they're highly potent in the first few months, but they mutate very quickly. You know, if you kill your hosts off, you don't survive, right? So the life cycle of a virus, these kinds of viruses, is to become less lethal over time. Within 2 years, non-lethal, every time. So and these guys know it. So when they proposed all these vast things about the virus, it was BS from the very beginning. From the very beginning, and we had effective means of mitigation. You know, ivermectin and hydrochloroquine were absolutely effective against the virus. Ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, and vitamin D. Right?
Do you know artemisinin? It's kind of like can get rid of the virus effect.
Yeah.
If you take it.
Yeah, almost all of them affect the ACE2 receptor, which is how the virus replicates. So if you disrupt that, you disrupt replication, so you mitigate the virus's lethality. You know, Fauci's the one that destroyed the ivermectin stores in the United States, because the law said that if you have something that can mitigate the propagation and depth of the disease, then we cannot give you emergency authorization for a new drug.
Yeah, I remember in 2021 when people were trying to buy ivermectin in the United States, it's really hard. They have to get prescriptions.
Yeah, we
or they
flew to
have
Costa Rica.
easier
Yeah,
to
we
buy
flew to
it.
Costa Rica, bought a whole bunch of it and brought it back and then sent it to our friends.
Some people even order it from India.
And we ordered some from India.
Yeah. My package from Canada was just seized.
You're so smart. You figured that stuff out. You know, so few people really figure this stuff out, you know?
I'm fortunate because my parents brought me into the whistleblower movement, so Miles will told us about this.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think it's kind of like a God's direction as well, led us to meet the movement, to meet all the people that's having the same like-minded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank heavens that we have the capability of doing the research.
Yeah.
And that even though they do wipe the data off of the web, been findable, right? So if you're steadfast, you find what you're looking for if you know how to look, right? Yeah. But years ago, we would have never had that. So that's a real benefit to all of us, right?
I also want to talk about the judicial system in the United States.
Oh my gosh, it's completely corrupt. Yeah, horrible. You think about the CCP, right? Even when Mao was taking over China, one of the directives is always take over education. One of your first targets is the family and education. You educate the kids to be suspicious of their own parents. You educate them to believe that warlords are the ones that are telling you the truth, and then you feed them propaganda so that they don't know any better, right? So if you think about if you think about our education and judicial system, they're like inundated with the liberal mindset. 94% of all educators are Democrats. right? That judicial system is not far behind. So what it means is that the entire judicial system of the United States has been corrupted, right? Which means they believe the propaganda. And when you look at juries of your peers, like all of these J6 guys, they were transported to Washington, D.C. Why? They had local judicial systems that could handle it. They transported them to D.C. because 94% of the population was liberal, right?
Like there's a left or right in the U.S. judicial system as well.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah. In my opinion, a jury of your peers is a complete joke. Where do you get your peers? Especially well-educated peers. Like I would never feel good with 12 jurors as my peers. How well-read are you? You know, I mean, if you don't know what I know, you're not my peer. You know, I want to have people that are well-educated, not in the education system, but through research, that understand the diversity of the world and can make cognitive decisions based on logic. And I don't feel confident in that. So that system is broken because the judges are DEI and the jurors are uninformed. Yeah.
So my next question is just out of my curiosity, because a lot of legal cases that's going on against my school happened in the Southern District of New York.
Oh, right, yeah.
So when I was doing some research, I was wondering why did they pick this location? For Trump's case, a lot of allegations happened in Southern District of New York.
Yeah.
And all of Miles' case happened in Southern District of New York.
Yes.
Why? I was just trying to find the answer, but I don't know.
I think I would be guessing on that because I haven't researched that very well. Trump was an industrial magnate in New York. Yeah, it's funny when people don't give him credit for what he's done. I mean, his empires have gone up and down, right? He built incredible buildings in New York. I mean, very difficult to do. When you have that kind of a project, it's complicated. Getting everything aligned and succeeding at it, hard to do. Well, it also makes him someone that's hated by people that are in the poor. They feel downtrodden, right? They were probably picking areas of New York that were poor, that had a gripe against Trump, and this is just speculation. Yeah.
Some people say that place connects the deep state.
Probably is, yeah. That makes sense too. Well, Chicago for sure, right? I mean, like so many bad guys that come out of Chicago, right? The concept that the mafia worldwide have inserted themselves in the highest positions of business and government should never be maligned. Just think about the amount of money the Mexican mafia, the cartels, got from illegals coming across the border. They were charging $10,000 a person. That's a lot. If you multiply that times 20 million, you get a lot of money, right? And that's not the only money. They have a stream of income from child trafficking and drug-related stuff. So these guys have all this money. What are they going to do with it? They buy banks. They buy industry.
So that goes back to the.
That goes back to New York and Chicago. These guys don't just stay mafia. They buy into industry and then they wash their money through failure. And like it's a huge thing. And we don't.
It's getting to a vicious cycle now.
Yeah. It's the same in China, right?
Yeah.
We, the people, have no idea that this stuff is going on. And unfortunately for us, the people that represent us are paid off. So this is all just a game. Yeah, I think it's a game. And those guys get so much money, they have no incentive to not do it.
Speaking of the judicial system, right now you said that it's so corrupted, right?
Totally.
So what are we going to do in the future to restructure it, to make it great again?
That's why I thought Gates would be awesome. You need someone that is like a little bit outside the box to apply the pressure, right, to clean up the system. Personally, I don't think they should have folded on Gates. I think they should have held everybody's feet to the fire. I think that's true of all these appointees. If they don't hold their feet to the Republicans and the Democrats' feet to the fire, how's it ever going to change? And you hold their feet to the fire by taking away their money. How do you take away their money? Well, guess what? You let the government shut down, right? You take away the money. Those guys will fold. And when they complain about $174,000 a year salary plus perks, how do you feel about making $174,000?
That's great.
Yeah, me too. Going to a meeting and listening to a bunch of people talk and then saying yes or no, come on. That's an easy job.
Maybe we can go to the next topic, is the education. Because in our declaration, we say that we're going to spend money and time to restructure the education system. So speaking of the education system, what are your thoughts on it?
So I got certified to teach. Yeah. And I went into the school. And I'm an engineer, right?
Yeah.
So engineers want 90% success and 10% failure. So I went into the school, and those kids' lives were miserable. I mean, there's like three to five kids in my classroom that had two parents. The rest of them only had one parent. Some of them had no parents. This is like freshmen in high school. I was teaching math. I was like, holy moly, these kids, some of the kids are like working till
When
2
was
in the
that?
morning.
When was
87.
Insane.
Yeah. You know, they're in a box. Honestly, the education system's completely broken worldwide. Really, it's an inventory system for children. Like, it's like having a warehouse where you put a box until you're ready to use it, you know?
And you are just a part of this society.
Yeah, it's terrible. You know, I can't imagine what it's like to be 6 years old and put in a box for 6 hours and told to sit down. Like, is that natural for a 6-year-old? You know, is it reasonable to make the majority of their time sitting in a chair listening to a dictator tell them what to do? You know, I mean, how does that help them become responsive, respectable adults that have initiative? I don't see it. So, for me, the education system is completely broken. I don't know if you know this, but in 1931, Hitler required that all people's children be educated by the Nazi system. In 1933, the United States followed suit. Isn't that weird? That it wasn't a requirement until 2 years after, you know, what was it? It was a retaliation. It was like, well, if you're going to teach, you know, Nazism, we're going to teach democracy. But both systems, when you take children away from parents and require it, guess who becomes the overlord? Like, who's responsible for children? Parents should have initial responsibility for they should be responsible for their children. You know, if you take some of that responsibility and you give it to someone else, guess what? They're going to relinquish responsibility, especially if there's a law about it where they get punished. So they relinquish the responsibility of education to their government, who, by the way, has been corrupt for a very long time and takes advantage of that responsibility to slip in their narratives. And then what do you got? I mean, you can read any history book in the United States. It's completely wrong. Total lies written by the victors. I mean, not even close. If you just go and read, you can pick any history book up. Here's one. Like, how did Lincoln get elected? I mean, he's a hero of the United States. Who funded his election? He lost like every election. The guy couldn't win to save his life. I mean, just great order. The guy couldn't win to save his life. How did he get elected? The banks funded Lincoln's election. What was the act that Lincoln passed in 1862 that changed the face of America? Does anybody know that history? Where's that taught in school? He passed the National Banking Act and then created the greenback, which had no basis, complete fiat money. Okay, so first of all, because he was funded by the banks, he paid them back by passing the National Banking Act. They'd been fighting for that for years. The National Banking Act, banks all over the world have been known to be corrupt forever, you know? When he passed that act, he gave the banks power over the United States, power of distribution, you know? It's like giving someone a railroad, you know, except it's for money. And then he actually created money that had no basis, not on production, not on gold, nothing. So it's total fiat money. You just say, hey, it's worth $1. Devaluation of labor right there. Okay, so Lincoln then realized he made a mistake. And then the next thing you know, the guy's dead, you know? So, yeah, a hero and a villain all at the same time. No one knows that. It's never taught in school because they don't want to tie anything to the banks. You know, do you know when you give your money to a bank, who owns your money?
The bank.
The bank owns your money. They promise to give it back. How does that work for you?
And they control the rate, interest rate.
And they control how much you can take out at a time.
Yes.
That's right. That's right. So what does that mean about your money? It's not yours. You just gave someone your money.
Your hard-earned money is not yours.
It's not yours.
It's theirs.
It's
They're
theirs.
using it to invest.
Yeah, the way they want, right? And what do they buy? You know, well, here's an interesting thing. Who supports the most number of NGOs in the United States? NGOs, non-government, you know, organizations that are funded to like bring illegals into the country. They're funded to bring illegals in. They're funding, you know, the war in Ukraine. They're funding all these nefarious things. Who does it? Vanguard. The largest investment institutions in the world fund those NGOs. You can look it up. There's a company called Fractal, and what they do is they do advanced computing to tie the path of money throughout the world.
So that's a company who's funding those NGOs.
Yeah, just follow the money. Yeah, it's all about following the money. Yeah. So
where does the money come from to that company?
Oh, remember the Federal Reserve.
So the Federal Reserve gives the money to that company funded the NGOs.
The Federal Reserve increments a field in a database. They don't print physical money, they increment a number in a database. Oh, there it is, you know. Then they distribute that to the top 10 central banks. That gets distributed to the central banks virtually for free. Those central banks have to keep a certain amount of money on store. There's a law about that to balance how much they loan out. Those central banks then loan that money out at a lower rate to the first givers. Who do they loan it to? They loan it to guys that make decisions about money, like BlackRock, like Vanguard, like State Street, right? So the banks distribute the money to first takers who get first purchase rights on that money. Remember, the money decreases in value as it goes down the hill, so they get first purchase rights on that money, and then of course they do exactly what we just talked. They hand it off to NGOs to accomplish their narrative. It's like, making sure that you devalue, that you strip the lowest level of American laborers from the market and give it to illegals coming in, right?
That's bad.
It's bad. These guys are like, they have no heart. They're nefarious, mean, cruel people that'll do anything to people in order to gain money and power.
Yeah, we just talked about it yesterday, the 1%.
It's the CCP. Yeah, it's the oligarchs in America. It's they're all over the world.
Yeah. So, what do you think the Chinese people could cooperate with the Americans in the future to maintain peace and harmony?
I had some guys that were working for me for my last company that were in China. I think cooperation through work efforts. Honestly, my company had a very hard time after the pandemic. Cooperation in work, is a great way to create business. And of course, when you do that, you can't transfer money to them from the United States. I don't know if you know how that works. It just doesn't work that way, right? The banks have all this. Yeah, they have. So we did it through like a cryptocurrency, right? But cryptocurrency is now being subsumed by the big players. So I don't know how that's going to work out. But that's what has to happen. We all have to decide that alternative currencies, create a vehicle for communication and for working together outside of the government taxation system and the banking control system, right? And if we can't do that, then I feel negative towards mankind's future. Yeah, I think we have to have alternatives.
I think what you just said, all the things comes to financial system, the currency.
Yeah, it's the bottom line. Power is the bottom line.
So as long as we start addressing these issues, democracy, freedom of speech will all be solved.
Yeah, I think that's true. I did a lot of research to come to that conclusion. Yeah. My major thesis is that psychopaths have always existed. They control the world, and they try very hard to create docility in the people of the world so that we accept their narratives and redistribute our labor value to them. Yeah. And that the system at the bottom of that control structure is economics and people being able to feed themselves and have housing. And so, and they know it.
So this is my first time coming to this large celebration.
Yeah.
And me too. I was thinking, so the Chinese people are still fighting their fight as well, and that like Chinese ordinary people should do things like you. Like, you have any message to the Chinese people who is still fighting?
I have met a lot of Chinese people. People worldwide have good hearts. Good souls, they want the best for their family. They want to have kids and be happy and enjoy their communities. I think the message is clear. We all have to be wary of the people that are at the top of the food chain. They're undoubtedly, the majority of them are psychopaths who are self-serving and cruel, capable of cruelty. And so for us, we the normal people of the world, we have to align. It's not our political systems, and it's not our races, and it's not our religions. It's control. We have to fight against control.
What about those people who refuse to read those information, to refuse to research?
What can you do?
You can't do anything.
No, I don't think so. That's in my opinion, I understand why they think that way, because if they go along with it, they gain favor enough where they can have income and feed their family and have and they're only giving up a little at a time, right? So from their perspective, they can have a good life, right? And from my perspective, that when you see that someone comes into your house and they take one thing every time they come in, they take the candlestick, they take the silverware, they take the TV, and soon, after a couple of years, your house is empty, right? that's what it's like, right? I mean, it's slow, right? And at first, you know, you like them being in your house, they have a nice personality and everything, you know, and they're good to your kids, but every time they're taking something, that's what it's like. So I understand your point of view.
So for me, I think those people are being left behind by time, by this century. So
I
right
hope
now
so.
people are waking up. A lot of information.
Yeah, you see that here.
Yeah, as long as you're trying to learn, to acquire, to analyze that information, you can go to the next level. But people who refuse to take that information, they're being left behind. We can't do anything.
I really hope that's true. You know, I feel bad for them. They're left, but at the same time, I believe that they're the ones that are reinforcing this negative system that's causing the rest of us to be disadvantaged. You know,
A lot of hard work.
Yeah, I mean,
Double our force.
Yeah, and it's not just disadvantage, they're literally killing our children, right? I mean, that makes me really mad, right? When I know that someone is harming my kids, you know, and they're doing it on purpose, I'm like, what? You know, that's a non-starter. You know, so if there's a guy hurting my kids and there's a person standing next to him, giving him money and saying nice things to him, I consider that person next to him to be just as evil.
Do you try really carefully to talk with your kids about communism or like the things that's going on in the world to keep their mind going in a...
So I was married to a very liberal woman, and she liked rose-colored glasses. You know, she liked to see the world the way we were talking about, right? She was fearful of the future, and she liked control, and then she wanted to wear rose-colored glasses. So she sold that side. I sold beware of this mind, think of this communism, the overthrow of the family unit. My kids are kind of like in the middle. You know, they're between, so they play the victim, because that whole side plays
they have a wide perspective.
Yeah, but they also are victims, you know, and anytime someone plays the victim, that's a very negative thing for everybody around them and themselves, right? Because you cannot be a champion if you play the victim, right? There's no way. A champion always believes in their potential to succeed, no matter what, you know, at all odds, right? And they don't allow for themselves to feel bad about themselves because, oh, I didn't do as well as I wanted, or someone hurt my feelings, you know. Well, no, you let your feelings be hurt, and you didn't do as well as you wanted because you got to put in a little bit more time, you know, and effort. Well, they're kind of in the middle, yeah.
That goes back to the education side.
Yeah, it does.
Parents are the most important role.
They should be.
Do you think that education should go back to family parents? Like what we did, like in China, what we did in the past, we have like family school.
Well, that's homeschooling in America, right? Yeah. I absolutely believe in homeschooling. Like the tip of the spear. You know, if you had a weapon against the oligarchs and against communism and against the redistribution of the value of labor, that is the weapon. You know, the weapon is for a family unit to live as a family. You know, to separate responsibilities in a reasonable way. You know, you can't both work. You know, you can't both go off to some guy that pays you and leave your kids with somebody else. You know, it's not going to work out. That other person's going to be one of these people that twists their mind, you know, so it means you have to have someone that takes care of the kids. And we don't actually have that in America. They both work, and, you know, so, yeah, I think the family unit's the whole key. And really, I think that the two people that are in the relationship with the kids have to make the decision that one handles the kids and the other one works. You know, and they make a little bit less money, and they don't have that, you know, the 5 cell phones and the 2 new cars and the TVs, but their kids are happy and strong and believe in themselves and can be successful. Yeah, I agree with your thought there. Yeah.
Thank you. That's all my questions.